Welcome to Time for Real Action. Today's topic is about fathers with disabled children. And I'm delighted to welcome both Donny and Navin into the studio today.
Hi, Pammy.
Hi. Donny, just starting with yourself first. Can you tell us a little bit about your children?
Basically, I have three children. Josh is my oldest, who has severe learning disabilities and is on the autistic spectrum as well. And then I have Isaiah, who has just recently been diagnosed with the spectrum of high functioning. They're no longer, from what I've been told from a professional, they're no longer able to call it Asperger's. They've got to call it high functioning. Why, I don't know, but we just know it as being Asperger's. But yeah, it kind of started when Josh was 4 months old. He had the MMR jabs. Before him having the MMR jabs, he was fine. There was no problem with him as in having any type of disability. So my question's always been to professionals, what is the epilepsy got to do with the learning disability? Do they go hand in hand, or are these two different disabilities? Why is it that they're so commonly connected all the time together? And I think I've never really had a clear picture of why that is, but through experience of working with people in mental health and other families that I've come across, it's quite a unique thing where both these things are connected together, and I still don't understand why that is. So I mean, moving on forward now, I've been through a lot of difficult times with Josh, because when he was younger he was not able to settle. We would obviously take him out and whatnot, and people kind of look at you and judge you as being, well, you know, why they're not able to look after the child. I think what it was, a lot of people looked at it and saying, we've got a naughty child and they don't know how to deal with him. And obviously it wasn't that. We got to learn over time that there is an issue, there is a problem, and it wasn't until about 5-6 years old that Josh was not diagnosed, but then it was kind of made out to be, as in a statement from school, that the local authority have to do, that there is some type of disability, that he needs to go to a special school.
So Donny, from how you started at the beginning, it's very much sometimes that you've got a lot of questions you want to ask, and I think a lot of families are in that position sometimes. At the moment, for you, it's the fact that my son's not only got learning disabilities, got epilepsy. Now, are those two joint? You know, why has that happened? And Donny, certainly with a lot of the families out and families that we know, it's not usually. I think a lot of the audience that is probably tuning in today, it's not necessarily that your child might have one disability or impairment. You can have several factors, whether it be epilepsy, learning disabilities, whether it be sensory impairment. But for yourself, you still feel like you've got a lot of questions you want to ask, haven't you?
At the end of the day, I'm slightly different from Donny in the sense that initially I had a lot of questions that I wanted to ask the professionals as to why my son is epileptic, severe learning difficulties and things like that. But then as my journey and my son's journey progressed, I just decided that, well, it is what it is, yeah. And the best I can do is to try and make my son's life as happy as possible, our own family life as happy as possible, and just rely on the professionals around us to actually give us whatever interventions there are. Knowing why it happened now really doesn't interest me too much, because I know I have got it, whether it is because of MMR or not, I don't know. As far as the MMR is concerned, I think that regardless of what you say, I think it's saved more lives than not saving it. So again, there's a balance to be had, and it's very much a personal view. Depends on which side of the wall you fall down.
And one thing we certainly try to do on this show is have that honest and open discussion, and it is, like we said, a very controversial and you know, and a real issue for many families. As you said as well, I think listening to both yourself, Navin and Donny, we have some parents where it's very much, and quite rightly, you know, it's understandable. We have lots of families, and you know, who are very much about, well, how did this happen? You know, did I do anything? Was it something I could have prevented? And where there's other families that said, okay, it is what it is. You know, there's no real explanation for it. This is still my, you know, I need to now move forward from that. So just thinking in terms of your journeys as fathers, you know, your experiences as fathers, when obviously, you know, you realise that your child is going to have a lot of challenges and there's going to be lots of things that you're going to maybe have to adapt as a family. How, you know, how did you take it on board being the fathers of those children and being the male, the main male in the family as well?
Well, me, we realized through diagnosis that my son was developing very late. At that time, we didn't really know very much about autism and things like that. He was about 3. I just shifted down south for a job. And by the time he was 4, 5, we had started realizing that he just would not be capable of doing things that other children would normally be doing at that age. We came back up because the services were bad. I gave up my job just so that he could get better services, education, health-wise up north. When I started realizing that we were going to have lots of problems, I just suddenly thought to myself, there's only one life to be had. And there's only one car I can drive at a time. There's only one roof I can sleep under. That chasing after money and career, etc., was not as important. And suddenly I started getting involved with my son's issues. And the more I got involved, the more pleasure, the more richer my life was. And before I knew it, I suddenly realized that because of him, I was actually being a much better person. You know, I was starting to think about how lucky I was. Now, this might sound silly, that I feel as if I'm lucky to have had a disabled child.
Certainly not
but
silly.
I actually feel that I am, because otherwise I think I'd have been a very shallow person who would have gone to his grave without actually understanding the real value of life.
Exactly.
And even though my son is disabled, knowing all the disabilities he had and what a tough life he has, so long as I give him a nice, peaceful and happy life, which is all that we want, I think that that is far more important than anything else.
It's interesting, Naveen. We've got a film that we're going to be showing shortly with 2 fathers, and one of the fathers, I understand that he also had a very prominent career, and he actually gave that up as well so he could look after his son. So there are lots of changes and sacrifices that lots of families go through, and also those sacrifices are taken with fathers as well, isn't it?
Except that you might think when you start that was a sacrifice.
Yes.
Actually, I'd say it's not a sacrifice, it was a blessing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you. Donnie, would you like to add anything to that, please?
I think more than anything, the awareness that we're trying to raise within the Asian community with the fathers, I think there's more voices that need to be heard. So myself and Naveen are, you know, starting the ball rolling, and we're here if anybody wants to speak to us or speak to you, Palmy, about their children with disabilities. It's nothing to be afraid of, or it's nothing to be
How has it changed your life, Donnie?
It's changed my life greatly, because I think what it was, before we always caught up in our life, in our career, that we just want to be able to, you know, be comfortable in life. But right now, all that has gone out the window for me. Like Naveen said, it just comes down to working around your child, working around the disability, accepting the disability. And to be fair, I think I'm in a better position now than when I used to drive trucks as a profession, because I've now able to work and do what I want to do, work around my children, give them the best. Like Naveen said, it's all about just giving the best to them. And I think so far I've done as much as I could, and there's a lot more to do yet, and there's a lot more challenges that are going to come across, but it's not a challenge, it's something that we have to do on a daily basis. I don't accept it as being a challenge anymore. And I think having faith in God and being focused in life, in everything that we do, is most important. And obviously, as a parent, as a father or as a mother, I think it's very important to be exercising, looking after yourself, because if you're not looking after yourself, how much can you actually give input to looking after your children as well?
Sometimes it can be really difficult. I know lots of families get totally exhausted, but certainly, you know, try to spend, that message is so important, try to spend some time looking after yourselves too, so you can do a good job to support your child.
Definitely.
And I think what has been your output in terms of, obviously Danny, it's about exercise, being healthy, looking after himself as well. I know that you're very involved in lots of community work. Do you find that is your output? That is where you get your...
Yes, I think so. I think
energy?
that what I've done is I've managed to sort of make a nice joining up of community work, which actually is fun, enjoyable, very productive. But at the same time, I learn from it things which I can actually use with my son. So it's like it's almost like having your hobby and your job at the same time. It's almost like an ideal world for me. Yeah.
Okay, and do you want to give some examples about some of the things that you've learned out there in the community that you've been able to support your son and your family with?
Oh, there's tons. I mean, the very fact that I'm actually going out there meeting different families who've got different tips and tricks of how they deal with individual situations with their child, which won't be in any book. A social services officer might not have it, a psychologist won't have it. It's just a little trick or a tip on how to make a person eat that way, because you can use this particular method. There are plenty of these which we can share with each other, and that's why I think this sort of community that you're trying to build up is important, because we have got an incredible knowledge that we have built up through ourselves, through our own personal experiences. We share that amongst ourselves. It's going to be much easier to be able to cope with those day-to-day demands, but at the same time to know that you're not alone in this world facing this. There are tons of people with similar and sometimes even worse issues that they have to deal with, because apart from disability can cause problems with jobs, and there could be all sorts of, especially these days with austerity, cuts in services, not being able to get the right services, etc. All those different pressures are there. If you can share with other people these sort of things, it actually eases life on you.
You just touched on a point that I was going to bring later on the programme, which is about the support network. And I know that we've been definitely talking to both of you, because you've been very involved in Include Me Too's work. And once again, thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences as fathers. One of the things I just want to touch on is, apart from the network, was the isolation that a lot of fathers feel. I know, Donny, it took you a while to, because everybody along their journey, it's sometimes some people can talk about things, whatever affects them, or be able to deal with things head on very early on. For some people, it takes a little bit longer for it to digest and to feel and sit comfortably, or feel that they are able to, to be able to share that experience. Donny, I know that you shared with us that you felt for a very long time that you weren't able to share, what you were going through, and even let your very close friends and colleagues know that your child had additional needs. Do you want to explain a little bit more?
I think what it was, it got to a stage where obviously I knew with Josh that there was an issue, and there was a disability, and there was some form of illness as such, and then I kind of more or less accepted that. But then, having known that Isaiah was also going to be diagnosed with a medical problem as well, I think at that point it was just almost, I could deal with one, but having two with similar kind of disabilities, but totally opposite spectrums. So it was almost the one that has the understanding doesn't understand the social cues, and the one that doesn't have the understanding has the social cues. So it was the opposite on each side, and trying to find the balance to work with both of them and to accept that.
These are both your sons, isn't it?
These are both my sons, and so it was almost I had to accept to kind of strip my life into half and be two different people to them, because they both needed a different type of role model in their life. And for me to be accepting that as a person, it felt hard for me, because I didn't have the courage to talk to people about it. Okay, family knew about it, but then sometimes can you really discuss certain things with family either? Because they kind of just look at, I'm not saying the family hasn't been supportive, definitely family have been supportive, but sometimes it needs somebody else that you need to speak to, because sometimes, because you're in family all the time, maybe they don't understand certain things that you want to talk about. We see on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week. Family, okay, they only see occasionally. I'm not saying that family don't see everything, which probably they don't, In fact, most families probably don't see it, or because parents don't want to discuss these matters, even with their families. And through what I do within work, I've been in them situations where people don't like to discuss, and I think isolation doesn't cure anything. And this is my own personal experience. The earlier on that you can start to come out of your shell, the better. Okay, it's taken me 14 years to talk about it, but the thing is, I'm in a better position right now, and everything's got a time. And I think this was my time to talk about it. So I'm kind of quite happy, and I'm glad that I'm able to talk with you, Palmy, about it, and with yourself, Navin, and all the other people that are going to be tuned in, because I think it's very important for the Asian community, for fathers within our community, to accept that we have children with disabilities, and it ain't a problem. Yes. It's a blessing in disguise, and we have to just adapt our lives to be able to work with our children and do the best for them. And if we can achieve that, then we've done a good job.
Thank you, Tony. We are now about to take a short break, and in that break you'll see two films with two fathers also talking about their children. We've got Sukhnindajit Braich and Ian Hughes. Take a look.
Hi, my name is Sukhnindajit Singh Braich. I'm married to my wife Parmjit Kaur Braich. We have 4 children. Manveer Singh Braich is the child we're speaking about today on the main. He's 15. He was diagnosed with Angelman syndrome in 1999, I believe it was. We have a daughter, Serena Kaur Braich, who's 11. And we also have twins, Jessica and Bethany Kaur Braich. I work from home on a self-employed basis. My wife is a housewife, and the children keep her busy, and my son, Manveer, who we call Manny, keeps her busy. So it's a hectic life at times, but an enjoyable one at that. My advice to the fathers in my situation is, if I look at myself, is just to be strong, strong as an individual, strong as husband and wife, and as a family, because only then you'll benefit your child. Not to be ashamed of your child, not to be ashamed or embarrassed. Do the best for them. Sometimes we have to do more than other children of a similar age. But just to be strong, to be focused. It is challenging, it is difficult, but this is where we have to remain strong, because our children need us to be strong for them, really. And yeah, just to kind of, like what we did is when, we found out, we kind of got in touch with other families, and it's always good to be able to talk, to get support from other organisations, to get involved in what your child might be going through at school, or with support groups. So it's nice just to kind of be actively involved as well. But really just to be natural to yourself, not to pretend to be somebody else. I've come across families where parents haven't been able to lead their so-called normal life, and have had to kind of leave the situation, leave the family environment, and kind of not being able to handle it. But initial stages are very hard. Just acceptance of having a child with a disability isn't easy. But then, as I said, this kind of sometimes, I suppose, shows us what we're made of, because either we can crumble or we can remain strong and go forward. And as I said, with myself and my family, our faith has helped us to do that. Our Christian faith and the faith of others, and the prayers and support of our church, knowing that it's not just the help we're getting help when we're praying. So it's helping us to remain strong in that way. And that has helped us a lot. When I speak to people, they go sometimes, well, how have you coped? And we've told them how we've coped. So this is personal to myself. Our faith, reading the Bible and praying has helped us, and we've had many stories to tell to encourage other people. So, as I said, to fathers, I would just say, look, you might have to miss out on certain things, but then you can always take your child with you to some of these things that you think you might be missing out on. life doesn't get worse. In a way, life gets much better. Now sometimes what I find is that when my son's not with me, I feel as if part of me is missing. I don't know what to do with myself at times when he's not there. So, as I said, we live a fulfilled life, an enjoyable life, a blessed life, I feel now, through Manny. I remember the support group saying this to me at the beginning, that you'll find your child such a blessing. And initially at that point I thought, well, how can this be the case? The doctors have told me my child will speak 4 words, they'll have seizures and maybe not be toilet trained. How can this person be saying that? But obviously they'd been further down the road, they'd met other parents, they'd dealt with the challenges that lay ahead, and now I understand. And as I said, you have to kind of look at yourself initially. So you start with yourself, and then you kind of do the things that you need to do with your children and your child with special needs. So all things are possible. There's a lot of people out there to help. We're not alone. Sometimes it does feel as if we're alone, as fathers, as parents, as carers, because a lot of people do not see the things we're doing 24/7. They might be in bed when we're changing nappies. They might be in bed when we're giving our child a shower early in the morning. And they might be in bed when we're having to take our children to the hospital. So, but as I said, if we can remain focused and strong, then we can deal with all these challenges that lie ahead.
Hi, my name's Ian Hughes. I have 3 children, but my middle son, who's 9, has a raft of special needs. The main one today is his autism, but he also has some chronological disorders. He has epilepsy, and he has suffered but is fully recovered from cancer. He was born, everything seemed perfectly normal, and yet he missed all his milestones, every single one. He wasn't even beginning to start to walk until he was almost 2 years old. But the autism actually didn't come until he was 5, because other things got in the way. At 3 years old, he was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, a cancer of the blood. And to be honest, that took precedence over everything. So the autism, when it did finally come, wasn't the biggest concern to us. Keeping him alive was our #1 priority at that point in time. That said, since then, autism has taken over, as has several of his other diagnoses. And so, but by the time that came to be, we'd already got used to it. We were already familiar with it, comfortable with it. It never really came as a shock to us, because it came at a time where we couldn't give it due course and attention. I think the hardest one is always going to be ignorance. You can't expect everybody to know everything, but to know a little bit of basics, especially of something as common as autism. A typical example would be when my son was playing in a playground with a little girl. I was talking to the mum, and then she asked me what was wrong with my son, because he was doing some typical Zachary things. And when I told her it was autism, she grabbed her daughter and ran off with her daughter in her arms, shouting over her shoulders, "Don't you realise that autism is catching? How dare you put him amongst my daughter and other children?" And I'm not speechless very often, but I was then. But it is the sad fact, yet again, as I say, that ignorance breeds fear, and that is what we have to fight with every day. We've been lucky that, to be fair, most of the state provided services have been very good to us. In our local area, we have something called Inspire, which nationally is known as CAMS, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. And they have been amazing for us right from the off. We had something called ATTACK, which was Team Around the Child, until he was 5. We've had reason to have issues with his schooling in the last 12 months. We've used another organisation within the council called Parent Partnership, who have been amazing, absolutely staggering. So to be fair, we've never had an issue on that front. We've been one of the, but I know many that have. But we've been lucky that whenever we've needed help, it's been there and been available for us. I'm there for him. When he needs me, I'm there. and I listen. It's very important to listen to your child and to act on what they say. I also believe that just because they have special need doesn't mean they don't have to understand what's right and wrong. Discipline is important. To understand what they can and can't do, what is and isn't acceptable, to the best of their abilities, is very important. But the main one is be there and listen. Lots. Listen to your partner. Listen to what they have to say. I said that my son had a bad cold. My wife ignored me, took him to hospital, and 4 days later he was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. If we'd have left it much longer, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you as a dad, because he wouldn't be here. So listen to your partner, listen to others around you. Don't brush off, don't pretend, don't bury your head in the sand, don't pretend nothing's wrong. And accept your child for who they are, not what you wanted. Stop, think, ask. As a parent of a child with special needs, I can tell you that the vast majority of us will be only too pleased to answer your question, rather than take your obscure looks and unnecessary advice that doesn't apply to something you know nothing of. Just think. If they're acting differently, if they're acting odd, just ask. We'll tell you. Just ask.
You just heard Sukhninder Singh Brach speaking about his son, who's 15 years old, and how their faith had helped them. I'd like to make a quote. Life does not get worse, it gets better. Living a full, blessed life as a result of money. Their family, as he felt, had grown stronger as a result of their journey. And through their experience, they've managed to support others and support them to also be just as courageous. They feel that everything is possible, and I'm sure that our guests in the studio, Donnie and Davin, will agree. And then he shouldn't feel alone, because there is a lot of support out there. Then you also heard Ian Hughes talking about his 9-year-old son, and that journey of finding out that at 3 years old your son has got cancer. And then, as you're just about processing that information and going through that experience, you find at the age of 5 that your son has also got epilepsy and autism. And once again, I'll quote him in saying that ignorance breeds fear. And many families that we've met, and including the fathers that we've spoken to over this show, have said, ask us. Some families might not want to talk about it, but don't be scared if you ask us. Don't make assumptions. Please do not stare. We'd like to talk to you, because we want to raise an awareness of a whole range of disabilities and impairments, so that we can also have a sense of belonging within our own communities. So I'm going back to yourselves, Donnie and Navin. In the first half, we did mention a little bit about a network, and Include Me Too has got a national network of support for families with disabled children and people. I know, speaking to you over quite a while now, there's been lots of discussions that we also could, we could also do with a father's support network. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
I think one thing that I've been discussing with somebody that's involved with an organisation called Talking Sense is about setting up a fathers group, because I feel that there's not enough fathers that have the time to be able to sit down and just discuss on a just a normal basis, where we can maybe sit down, have a coffee, have a chat. So we're trying to set up this fathers group along with yourself, yes, to be involved, so we're all part of the same hub, yes, so nobody's kind of working out of group. And
partnership is so key, isn't it? It's about people's time and resources, and certainly what our organisation Include Me Too is always welcoming is partnership working, so you're not feeling on your own, that we can come together, connect people together, and we really are looking forward to the discussions that are going to be taking place about having a father support group. And it's not necessarily going to meetings, it's also somewhere where you can pick up the phone and you can talk to somebody, and also that you can connect to people, through social media.
Twitter, Facebook, everything, we've got it all. But yeah, I think it's important that we really do this, because I think fathers in the Asian community, maybe a taboo subject to talk about their children with disabilities, but hey, there's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's something that we should be quite blessed about, and we should be looking positively and trying to look at the best outcome, and hence the reason why I'm here. Even with Naveen being here, so we're able to express our feelings and maybe give the confidence to other fathers to be able to be sitting here in this position with another show with yourself and be able to discuss this, because I feel that I want to just get the ball rolling, and with Palmy's help we've been able to do that, and it's been great.
Well, thank you. Well, it's not been it's been the organisation. It's like we've got a fantastic team, and within that team as well, we've got fantastic organisations also that support us to get out there and do that work. And it is about us talking about disability, you know, and really kind of raising an awareness. Navin, is there any last few words you'd like to say as well?
No, I'd just like to underline exactly everything that Donnie has said, and in that very same vein, I've already started doing things like that, because within a group that I founded in Rotherham Disability Network, we're hoping to have a subgroup which is for fathers, because of practicalities of timing, people go to work and things like that, and then hopefully join in with Include Me Too within that whole big umbrella as well. Great idea, and long overdue, I think.
Definitely, because we want to make sure that within our national network of support for families, it's also making sure that we've got, you know, a good balance of fathers. And in our network, we've got brothers and sisters, uncle and aunts, anybody who wants to have a stronger voice regarding disability and increasing an awareness of a range of disabilities and impairments within our diverse communities, whether it be Asian, Black, you know, ethnic minority. We just really want to make sure that we get that message out there. And talking about messages and positivity, we as the show has been run, you've probably seen at the bottom there's been a scroll which is actually been announcing that our awards have opened. We are absolutely delighted to have to be organising the first ever national awards. It's the National Community Inspiration Awards, and these are for yourselves as a community to nominate Black, Asian, ethnic minority, disabled children, young people and their families. In our awards, as you probably have seen as the scroll has gone, we down the bottom of the page, the awards are celebrating children from a whole range of different categories: courage, friendship, education, sport. We want to hear from you. We want you to nominate families, your relatives, your friends, people that you know. Maybe you're working in an environment where you're in contact with Black, Asian, ethnic minority families. Put those nominations in. And not to forget extraordinary fathers, mothers, grandparents, brothers and sisters. So please do get nominating. The details to contact us are being also given at the end of the show, and you by all means do get in contact with us on our website, via social media. Pick up the phone, you can talk to one of our team members. Please get behind this, because this is an opportunity for us to really start talking about disability. Let's start celebrating, get to know us, get to know our families, and see, you know, the uniqueness and the extraordinary resilience they have and what they're able to bring. As you said, everybody brings something to the table, so we're asking you to come and join us on our table and actually meet our families. So thank you ever so much, and certainly we will be keeping you up to date regarding the Father Support Network. So thank you, and thank you Donnie and Navin for joining us here today.
Thank you for calling us.